ora, Gareth. Beautiful pronunciation of Aotearoa, and kia ora. For anyone that's maybe tuning in from outside of New Zealand, Aotearoa is actually the real name of New Zealand, or the te reo name, the Māori name, and it can be a little bit to get your mouth around, and kia ora means both hello and thank you, which is so nice when there's a word that means both. So kia ora, Gareth, thank you for welcoming me in. Ko Cheryl tuku ingoa. My name is Cheryl, and super excited to share a few ideas with people today. And as I understand, I'm just going to double check back. First 20 minutes I'm sharing, and then the next 20 minutes we do a Q&A. Is that right, Gareth?
Yep.
Yeah, cool, awesome. So I'm going to sort of download some of the thoughts out of my head, which hopefully I've put into some sort of structure that makes sense to people. To give you an idea of what it looks like inside my head, something like this. I'm constantly working on how I can take what feel like really big, challenging concepts and turning them into ways in which people can comprehend and understand. So I want to share with you today some of the ideas and experiences that I've had around developing agility. And my belief is that you need to do this from the inside out, hence the title for today. One way I thought we could kick things off, and since you did mention that I did the first ever female agile rap, I thought I might pull it out today if everyone's okay with that. I did ask for a live beatbox. I didn't quite give enough notice on that one. Gareth's going to do it for me next time we do a live gig. So in the meantime, I've got one that's pre-recorded. Feel free to sort of jam along. This one is called the vulnerability rap. And I wrote this when I spoke in Amsterdam a couple of years ago. A good friend of mine, Nils, I'd seen him the year before, and I did the first rap, and then I came back again, and he said, "You've got to have a new rap." So I had to write a rap about the rap. So let's give it a go. Why not? Let's can we hear that one? Is that one okay? Yeah, cool. All right, thank you. Why do I do this? Vulnerability, it's good for us. Let me tell you a little story about a rap I wrote. I wrote it, then I spoke it all around the globe. And the funny little thing about this rap was it never was intended for such impact. It simply started out as a crazy idea. I simply had a story that I wanted to share. The story had a message. The message had a beat. The only way to test it was take it to the street. The stage was set, Vancouver style, 100 tech women learning agile, and my palms were sweaty. I took a deep breath, and the minute I went with it, storytelling with depth, and the place lit up. The rap was a hit. Something had happened that I didn't predict. I learned that day that my vulnerability is the key to connecting to those around me. I rapped in New York and Amsterdam, Venice, Singapore, even Brisbane. Everywhere I went, no matter the space, when I shared my truth, I created safe space. My message is simple, just keep it real. Vulnerability means that we can say how we feel. It's time to step up and lead with true agility, because our people are the key to true agility. Whew. There it is. That is the vulnerability rap. It always makes me quite nervous starting with the rap, but it also makes me shake out some of my nerves. So kia ora and welcome. That was a little way in which to give you an insight into different ways that I try and tell stories. One of them is rap, because it freaks me out, but at the same time, there's actually really valuable messages in there, and they're going to lead us into today. So I'm going to share a screen here, and hopefully this all goes to plan. Okay, can we see the slides? Are they showing? Okay, cool, awesome. Agility from the inside out. Note the triangle. The triangle is going to be part of our story today. And what's even more awesome is when the slides, all right. Starting off with a huge question. Can an organization be agile if the people within it are not? This is a question that, there's obviously no right or wrong answer to it. And I imagine it might be a valuable topic, in a breakout room situation to discuss this, because in my experiences, you cannot have that organizational agility if the people within it are not. And I thought I might share today a few of those experiences and what I've then gone on to do to try and address that. Now, in answer to that question, can an organization be agile if the people within it are not? There's a line right at the end of my rap which answers it from my perspective. People are the key to true agility. And I'm seeing a few nods happen at the moment, which is wonderful. I've worked as a coach for it's been 10 years that I've been coaching in IT, and I still am yet to come across a team that has high agility, that has people within it with low agility. And so the key missing ingredient there is those people. So here is another belief I hold. It is the agility of each individual that will determine the agility of the organization. And this was a bit of a confronting realization for me about 5 years ago. I transitioned from an IT project manager. I left IT because I couldn't handle being an IT project manager. I was terrible at it. And I left to go and become a coach, just purely a professional coach to develop people out of the IT world. As I learned more about coaching, I started to realize maybe some of these techniques and tools of coaching I could use with leading these teams within IT. And I went back in. I was fortunate to have a dad who's an agile coach and got upskilled pretty quickly in how I could bring these two worlds together. But I continued to come across the same challenges over and over again. Now, here's some photographs that I've captured through the different teams I've worked with. As Gareth was explaining, I actually did some stats up, and I've worked with, I think, 11 different countries now, with teams that are aiming to achieve agility. And it's been one of the most interesting, confronting, challenging experiences for me, is coming in to a team that often I'm asked to come in to support a team that's not performing well, to help support them to get working well as a team. And so I was going into these organizations, and the photographs of these teams are based Canada, England, Singapore. I think there might be some in New Zealand as well, Kuala Lumpur. And I was going into these teams, these organizations, and I was seeing some results come out that I couldn't fully explain. And I had other either scrum masters or coaches in the organization saying, "What are you doing differently?" And honestly, I didn't know. I wasn't sure why I was able to connect and support these teams to get them working well as a team and create agility. So I realized I needed to try and figure that out, because for me, it was happening, and for others, it wasn't, and I wasn't sure why. So in true agile approach, I started to run experiments, and I started to document some of the observations of what I was seeing. So as I'm working with these teams, it's really challenging. I'm not sure if anyone else can relate to this. Quite challenging when you're trying to observe your own behavior from an external perspective, and you're trying to understand, what is it that I'm doing that's different? I don't know, because I'm just doing the thing I do. And I started to realize that I was focusing on the personal agility of each person within the team. And this is probably due to the fact that I'd gone away and learned to be a coach. I came back into these teams, and I was not working on trying to achieve organizational agility. To be honest, we weren't even really aiming to achieve team agility. We were just trying to support the people within the team to respond to change and start working together, to collaboratively work together to achieve through that change. So this was sort of a bit of a light bulb moment of going, I think this is what I'm doing differently. I think I'm coming in it from a very different perspective. And people would start to come and say, can I come and observe what you're doing? And I'd go, great, can you come and observe and tell me? Because I don't really know what it is that I'm doing that's different. Now, I drew this diagram about, I think, 2 years ago. And it was sort of one of those moments, you know, when you draw something or you write something on a whiteboard and things just start to click. And for me, I actually started out on the personal agility level because I was coaching people one-on-one. I then started working with teams as a Scrum Master, so working in the team agility. And as I started to get better at that and started to work across more teams, I started looking at how do these teams of teams work together, which ultimately is around our organizational agility. How do we get all these different components to start working together in one system? And I started to realize these different layers were there, but at the center of it, in my view, is personal agility, and it is absolutely necessary in order to achieve the system of agility as a whole. So I drew this and all of a sudden it landed. And I went, I think the reason is I'm focusing on personal agility. So then the next question came was, well, how do you do that? What is that? Then I dove back into the research again and I started experimenting, and I started to take lessons and learnings for myself over the past 10 years and how I've got through certain scenarios and situations to develop the resilience and agility that I believed I was actually passing on to others in the coaching that I was doing. So again, this sort of weird world where you're trying to observe your own behaviors, but you don't have another lens to look at them at. So I would often ask people to come and watch some of my coaching to tell me what it was that I was doing that maybe was different from them. So this then started to form this question of, well, what is personal agility? And after 2 years since I drew that diagram of trying to explain it to people and trying to help others to align to it, I realized I needed to come up with a statement that was true to me, because already it's the same as saying to people, what is agility? You know, it's such a big loaded question, and it's a very high chance that you know, even a small group of people won't land on the same conclusion around how you define it. I see the same with personal agility. So what I realized I needed to do was step back from trying to create a definition that made sense to everyone and make a definition that made sense to me, so I could then start to share and develop education around it. So here's where I've landed. Personal agility is the ability to easily and consciously respond to change in a direction of intention. And the key words out of this that we're going to take from here are easily and consciously, direction of intention. Now, we surely if you're working in the space of agility, the responding to change is a bit of a given. We know that if we respond versus react, we see different results. So that's not the part that really I had to dig deep on. It was around, and not even so much the easily, it was around consciously responding to change. So are we actually conscious of the changes that we're making every day? And are we moving in a direction of intention? Because if we remove any of those words, we don't get the same result. Often I've been asked before to come in, can you make our people agile? And I'll go, okay, well, what does agile mean to you? And often it's, well, we need to respond faster to change. Now, I've realized I can get people to become comfortable with change, to respond quickly, but you can become something very quickly that you don't want to be if you're not being conscious about it. So that direction of intention is really important so that you can be conscious. So this is the definition that I've landed on and that I've begun to work from there. So we'll keep all of those words when we start to look at it. So once you've got a definition, then you can start to play with it, right? And I've pulled this apart about 1,000 times, and I'm constantly, every time I share it with others, I love the feedback. I love pulling it back apart, and sometimes another lens or perspective changes it again, because this is obviously the next natural question for people to ask when they go, okay, so your definition, yeah, okay, I'm happy with that. So how do we develop it? Because we need people. If we're going to have an organization that has agility, then we need to develop it in people. How do we do that? And again, I had to go back to the drawing board and go, oh, I don't actually know how I do it. I need to actually consciously figure out what those steps are. So I've again gone from a massive concept and tried to define it down, and this is the reappearance of the triangle, into what I call the 3 A's. And I want to be really conscious of saying that this is a really complex situation of changing people behaviors. I've created 3 A's as a simplistic frame, not a framework, because I know a lot of people are resistant to the word framework, but a frame or a construct that allows us to be aware of the different areas that we may need to focus on in order to develop this. So the 3 A's, align is number 1. You'll remember that term of direction of intention. That's really key. If we're not aligned, we can have people quickly adapting in all sorts of directions. And it's not until we start to try and define success that we realize we're misaligned. So align is number 1, anticipate number 2, and adapt is number 3. Now, align, I imagine, makes a little bit of sense to people. You go, yeah, I can understand. We had Gareth earlier talking about, vision and mission and purpose. I love how he talked about conscious, deliberate practices. So aligning is one that we can all understand. As coaches, we are often encouraging our clients to get clarity around what it is you're trying to achieve. Adapt equally might start to make a bit of sense, because we know that in order for us to respond to change, we need to adapt. But it's actually that bottom A, the third one, which has opened a huge level of thinking for me and massively responds into the agile tools and frameworks that we already have available that we can leverage when it comes to personal agility. So I'm going to dive a little bit. How am I going, Gareth, for time? How many more minutes do I have of sharing?
I've lost track slightly because I was listening to you.
So have I.
You still have about 10 minutes, Cheryl. No, okay. You've got a bit more, actually. So you've got about 8 minutes.
Okay,
yep.
Thank you.
Thanks,
I realised I didn't start a timer. All good. Align, anticipate, adapt. So I'm going to break down, again, I'm in my 3rd iteration of running some training around these. And so they are constantly evolving, but the A's are staying the same. So align, let's take a look at that one first of all. Here is the question that helps frame your current alignment personally. How clear are you on your values, vision, and personal direction? Now, I realize there's a lot in there, but it starts to give us an idea that without alignment to our values, our vision, and our personal direction, it makes it really difficult for us to make conscious decisions of how we will adapt. That I can't press more strongly. So often the coaching that I'm doing when people are stuck is usually because they need to make a decision to move forward, but they are paralyzed. What is it? Decision paralysis. There's so many different ways they can move. Usually what we need in order to move forward is clarity around what you're trying to achieve. So aligning in on it. The values piece there, I find in the 3rd iteration of this program, we still find that every time values is the toughest part for people, defining words that capture what's important to us. But man, it is an amazing journey to go through when you have the support of others and a coach to work with. And I'm sure there's many coaches that are on this call, or people that work in a role where they support others to define values. It is, in my view, one of the most important things we can do as a human, and makes a huge difference to the work we do. I know that Gareth earlier talked about Ikigai. Ikigai is one of the tools that I use in the align phase to help people to define that purpose around their personal direction. So there's 2 key modules that I run, and I'm calling them modules for now because I'm thinking about them in a training sense. But there's 2 key areas that I focus on in the alignment side when it comes to how do you develop these. And they're based on 2 questions. Where am I at right now? classic coaching starting question. And what is most important to me? So where am I at right now? This is what I'm referring to as a skill set called human-centered analysis. So metrics, I love data, I love numbers, and it is possible to measure this stuff. And this is what I'm working on at the moment, is what are the different metrics that we can capture that actually capture a human-centered approach. So where am I at right now? Really trying to understand where the individual's at. And then second of all, what's most important to me? So value-centered visioning. These two questions pulled apart and worked with a person can help us start to define around our values, vision, and personal direction. Second of all, so that's a line. I realize I'm moving through this a lot. I've got all these slides that I'll share wherever I'm supposed to share them so that people can read these afterwards. The second one is anticipate. And this is currently my personal favorite because it's a gnarly piece, which is, as I said, often overlooked, but I believe the secret sauce in order to achieve personal agility. And this is the question that aligns to it. What tools and practices do you have in place for anticipating change? Now, I know that Scrum was brought up in the previous conversation, and it's an easy go-to when we're talking about this stuff because it's so commonly used. But if we use Scrum as an example, what Scrum encourages with its ceremonies is for us to have those anticipatory practices to be able to look to the horizon. So while we cannot always predict change, we can anticipate it. And not only can we anticipate it, we can start to build scenarios and ways that we might respond if the change hits. So this is where if you take the anticipate side out, you can have a vision and you can respond when you need to that vision. But there's actually this piece down here, and the word that Gareth had used earlier was discipline. And in my experiences, I believe one of the reasons I am really successful with teams is that we hold discipline around the anticipate practices because it builds a strength of our team to respond to that change when it happens. And so the anticipate side of it, I'm still unpacking this because it is a huge piece, but having tools and practices, not a prescription, because there is no one tool or practice that's going to solve all your problems, but having a toolkit of them and preparing for it. You know, up here, I've got a backlog of items. You know, that's my alignment piece, is coming up with all the work I need to do, but I need to keep checking it on a regular basis that it still lines in based on the change that's happened for me over the last sprint. So the two questions for anticipate: what is the most important, I've forgotten the word thing, or what is most important to focus on next? And how do I navigate my flow of work? So when we're looking at, you can remember the first two questions around where am I at and what's important to me. Now we start to move into what am I going to do next? And, you know, future state design is what we're terming this skill, is around how we're going to break a beautiful alignment of practices that we use with teams. You know, customer journey mapping, you can do it for your own personal life. You can start to actually map out what are the things that are important to me. I often talk about things like focus areas. Focus areas for a person, you can align the same logic as you do for epics and stories. If you think of all the things you need to do in your life, how would you group them? These are your epics. What do I need to focus on? And then of that, what are the most important things to focus on next? So how do we start to plan that? And then the second part there around how do I navigate the flow of my work? Transparent navigation. Learn how you work as an individual. Learn how you work best. One of the things I love sharing with others is I try never to book any meetings for a Monday. I know that my energy is low on a Monday. My headspace is good, but my energy is usually quite low. So I try not to do anything too taxing, because I know that if I throw anything too hard in there, it's going to knock back my agility. So knowing how you work and the flow of your work is a huge part of it. And transparency, as many of us have experienced, is key to understanding where our flow is and isn't. So third of all, we have the third A, which is adapt. This one, again, seems really obvious, but there is a question here. How easily are you making conscious change in your life? And again, there's that word conscious again. The number of times I hear people say, I don't know where the year's gone. I don't know where the week's gone. I don't know, how did I end up doing this job? The number of times we end up in scenarios that it's almost like we're in a back seat. And I can relate. That's not with judgment that I say that. I can understand if we're not conscious of the decisions that we're making each day, we can end up in a place that we don't really want to be. So consciousness requires more work. And the two questions that we focus on is, how do I make decisions? This is our conscious prioritization. So being aware, why do we prioritize the things that we do? And second of all, how can I sustain personal agility? And I call this piece around sustainable agility. And I love that this is trending at the moment. The term, it's certainly not my term, but I'm noticing it trending around sustainable agility. And it always makes me smile because we use the word, and again, I'm going to use Scrum as an example. We use the word sprint. And it is not physically possible for us to continue to sprint all of the time. And so if we're going to have high intensity bursts, we need to create recovery mechanisms for individuals and teams to be able to create sustainable agility. And as I talked about, Mondays, I plan a lot of my creative thinking work on a Monday, because I know if I throw something solid and difficult on a Monday, that throws me off for the week. So learning our own sustainability and what we need, when we do all of this for ourselves as leaders, it is amazing what can show up with our teams. So there are our 3 A's. Here's our little triangle again. And I thought I'll just put those 3 up there as well. Those are the 3 questions that drive each of those A's. And as a final piece, and to link it all back in terms of from the business agility side of things, now that I've got some form and some frame to these, how can we start to apply this in an organization when we're looking to scale it? So this is this idea of inside out. We can work with the individuals and start to scale it out. I've been working on a little tool that I've been playing with a few different organizations called the Employee Agility Scan. Essentially, we're taking the 3 A's and we're looking at it on those 3 levels from that circle earlier. Personal agility, team agility, organizational agility. We're looking at the 3 A's, and we're using the scan in the same way that we do for culture surveys, and when we're trying to find out how our people are feeling. We're basically taking those 3 statements around alignment, anticipate, and adapt, and we're looking at them on the 3 levels of personally, team-wise, and organization-wise. What I find is it may be a takeaway for people if you want a tool to play with around this, is if you were to print this off yourself or digitally play on it and score how you're feeling today. One, it's a really interesting way to understand where am I at right now in terms of our alignment, but it's a really interesting mechanism with a team. So I love using this with a team and going, here we go, everyone has their own version of it. We're going to have a go at scoring it, obviously checking the safety of the team first. Otherwise, if it's not safe, everyone just says I'm a 5 and the exercise is over. But if we have a way in which we can talk about it, because man, it's so interesting when you've got a team that have really different scores, especially around like team agility, but it starts to help us highlight and have conversations around, okay, so if we're low in this area, what do we need to start working on it? So that's a little tool. I'll also, it'll be in the slide deck as well, where I've got a PDF of this, specifically the agility scan, if anyone wants to have a play with it. So there we are.